So before we get into the subject of the Dune movie, Denis Villeneuve has come out with an open letter to, I guess, Warner Brothers, HBO Max, because they have announced, if you're unfamiliar, they've announced that pretty much the entire Warner Brothers slate of 2021 has moved to streaming services, but it will also be released simultaneously in theaters. And the streaming service being HBO Max. Now, there's a lot of talk around HBO Max and the success of the platform as a whole. I have not paid that much attention to it, but apparently it hasn't been doing that well. And so this is almost like, I mean, I believe even Villeneuve says in his letter, which I'm about to read, he pretty much says like, this is a failing streaming service. And like, because you guys are just trying to stay alive, you're like taking things from these creators. And Denis Villeneuve is, I think, one of the greatest directors of our time. He is my favorite in terms of like living directors. He is generally subjectively my favorite director working right now, just because I love the way he makes films. Not just like I really love the films. He is like, whenever I think of a movie or a concept or a franchise, and I imagine the way he would do it, that's probably just the way I would want him to do the film. So I'm going to read the open letter first, and then we'll talk about it. So this is released on Variety.com. It was an open letter to HBO Max and Warner Brothers, it seems. He says, I learned in the news that Warner Brothers has decided to release Dune on HBO Max at the same time as our theatrical release, using prominent images from our movie to promote their streaming service. With this decision, AT&T has hijacked one of the most respectable and important studios in film history. There is absolutely no love for cinema, nor for the audience here. It is all about the survival of a telecom mammoth, one that is currently bearing an astronomical debt of more than $150 billion. Therefore, even though Dune is about cinema and audiences, AT&T is about its own survival on Wall Street. With HBO Max's launch a failure thus far, AT&T has decided to sacrifice Warner Brothers' entire 2021 slate in a desperate attempt to grab the audience's attention. This is scathing.
Wow.
He continues, Warner Brothers' sudden reversal from being a legacy home for filmmakers to the new era of complete disregard draws a clear line for me. Filmmaking is a collaboration, reliant on the mutual trust of teamwork, and Warner Brothers has declared that they are no longer on the same team. Dude, it gets worse. Like, I love this because like he's saying everything that I want to hear from these directors, and I want someone to say, like, I want someone to stand up to these studios and streaming services. So he goes on to say, streaming services are a positive and powerful addition to the movie and TV ecosystems, but I want the audience to understand that streaming alone can't sustain the film industry as we knew it even before COVID. Streaming can produce great content, but not movies of Dune's scope and scale. Warner Brothers' decision means Dune won't have the chance to perform financially in order to be viable, and piracy will ultimately triumph. Warner Brothers might have just killed the Dune franchise. This one is for the fans. AT&T's John Stankey said that
What?
His name is John Stankey.
Oh, no. I thought you misread it.
Anyway, AT&T's John Stankey said that the streaming horse left the barn. In truth, the horse left the barn for the slaughterhouse. Public safety comes first. Nobody argues that, which is why when it became apparent the winter would bring a second wave of the pandemic, I understood and supported the decision to delay Dune's opening by almost a year. The plan was that Dune would open in theaters in October 2021, when vaccinations will be advanced and hopefully the virus behind us. Science tells us that everything should be back to a new normal by fall. Dune is by far the best movie I've ever made. My team and I devoted more than 3 years of our lives to make it a unique big screen experience. Our movie's image and sound were meticulously designed to be seen in theaters. I'm speaking on my own behalf, though I stand in solidarity with the 16 other filmmakers who now face the same fate. Please know I am with you and that together we are strong. The artists are the one who create movies and series. I strongly believe the future of cinema will be on the big screen, no matter what any Wall Street dilettante says. Since the dawn of time, humans have deeply needed communal storytelling experiences. Cinema on the big screen is more than a business. It is an art form that brings people together, celebrating humanity, enhancing our empathy for one another. It's one of the very last artistic, in-person collective experiences we share as human beings. Once the pandemic is over, theaters will be filled again with film lovers. That is my strong belief. Not because the movie industry needs it, but because we humans need cinema as a collective experience. So, just as I have both a fiduciary and creative responsibility to fulfill as the filmmaker, I call on AT&T to act swiftly with the same responsibility, respect, and regard to protect this vital cultural medium. Economic impact to stakeholders is only one aspect of corporate social responsibility. Finding ways to enhance culture is another. The movie-going experience is like no other. In those darkened theaters, films capture our history, educate us, fuel our imagination, and lift and inspire our collective spirit. It is our legacy. Long live theatrical cinema.
I want to clap.
That was a hell of a letter, but I genuinely felt like it was worth reading, even just like the entire thing out loud here on the podcast, because I was just like, as soon as I read it, it was everything that I wanted, not just to hear from a director, but that, like, all the things that I have thought to myself and wanted to say. And he said it so, he did that thing where they say everything that was in your mind that you couldn't get out or put into such beautiful words.
Well, it's also crazy to me that he says at the beginning, he heard in the news.
I was just going to bring that up.
Like, nobody contacted him and told him, they consulted with him.
And apparently, I think that happened to a lot of other directors too. I think it was pretty much everyone. And that is, I cannot believe that is even possible. Like, am I just completely delusional in thinking that, like, these directors making millions and millions of dollars worth of movies just don't even get to know, even if it's not their decision or they don't have a part in the decision, they don't even get like an email? Are you serious? You don't send your director, the person who helmed the entire project, you don't send them an email and say, hey, just so you know, I'm really sorry, but we're going to have to make your movie an utter failure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they know that it'll get that reaction from people, from the directors too, because I want to say Nolan fought really, really hard to get Tenet released in theaters. So I think they tried to do a, sort of a sneaky move and just do it without consulting them. And also it feels like they're not being released in theaters, even though they are.
Yeah.
It feels like they're not.
Because one of the things he says that he's really confident that people will go to theaters when things clear up. And I'm not going to lie, I don't feel that way. I feel like once you open this streaming service door, you can't close it. Like, he was like, I'm really hopeful, I'm confident that, the people will prevail and go see movies. And I'm like, I mean, we will. Yeah. Some people will. He's confident that some people will, but I don't think that the masses are going to be like, oh, I've seen comments. I've seen people say, I've seen genuine story lovers and movie critics say that they're excited about this move because they don't want to sit next to people, screaming babies or people picking their nose next to them in the theaters, which is, granted, valid reasoning. Like, no one likes that, but I don't think that, like, is a deal breaker for cinema.
Yeah, I would be confident that people would go back to movies if they don't have the option to stay home. Mm-hmm. I think if there's not that option, I absolutely agree. There would be a surge of people rushing out to see movies once they feel like safe enough or whatever.
Yeah.
But not if they have the option to sit at home.
It's once the door's opened, I don't think that you can close it.
Because also, if you pay for HBO Max, why would you go pay, what? Yeah, $12 for a ticket?
I pay for HBO Max, and now I can see the biggest movies of the year. I'll still go see Dune in theaters. And this is just me as, like, someone who, like, has a lot to do and doesn't have the time to get to theaters that much. Like, I will still absolutely go see the movies that I really want to see in theaters, but the ones that are going to hurt even more are the smaller movies or the duds or the ones that, we just don't know as much about. Because if it's a movie that I go, that looks like it might be okay, and then I see it on a streaming service on a Friday night and I go, I'll check that out. That's where that movie is losing, because I'm still going to go see Dune. I'm still going to go see Mission Impossible, but Kong versus Godzilla. Yeah, I'll cop that on the TV. So I now that the door is open, I'm just terrified for the future, because I don't have the faith in the moviegoers that Villeneuve does. And I say that because the data showed that less and less people have been going to theaters over the years. It was already an industry that was becoming more niche and more, endangered. So
yeah, at the same time, it was still bringing in billions and billions of dollars a year.
Yeah,
but it was held up.
It wasn't going to die.
It was held up by, the MCU and the big blockbusters. But there were always those movies that like even Murder on the Orient Express, which wasn't a huge critical success, it was actually a really surprising box office success.
Mm-hmm.
I think it made like 200 million, which for a movie of that size or that sort of mid-budget movie was a really shocking success.
Yeah.
If it was released on HBO Max, it's not. I mean, people might have watched it, but it never would have had the chance to succeed like that.
And what he says about, he literally addresses it. He says, movies, he's like, streaming services are not a bad thing. It's a part of the ecosystem, and it's okay to exist. And it might even help some things in some areas. But movies like Dune, of the scope and size, in like a franchise like that, cannot live on streaming services. Like he straight up said it. And I'm like, good for him, because he's like, these movies that you guys want. I mean, the Marvel movies, like the Endgame is not going to exist as a streaming service movie. It just can't, because yes, these like, cheaper movies or movies that don't have as much like massive cast, VFX, just the scope of movies. Like Dune is a movie that is set on alien planets with a all-star cast that is probably well over 2 hours long. That is, and we know how his movies work. I mean, he has fantastic cinematographers. He hires all the best people. He has like all the attention to everything, to every detail. The budget for these kinds of movies are already just so hard. And when you've got these kinds of directors behind them that really, they have a strong vision. These aren't Netflix directors. And no offense to Netflix directors or anyone that's selling their movies to these streaming services, but and I'm not even going to say I know like the budgets of all these movies, but typically like some of the movies you might see just pop up on Netflix that might do all right. They might even be pretty decent movies. They're not like really expensive movies. And that's because Netflix can't afford to. Like they really shouldn't be spending all that kind of insane amounts of money. It's already hard enough for them to get the rights to the big movies. So like to produce them themselves, it's like you can't sustain on streaming services unless there's a revamp of the platforms, in my opinion, of the way that the platforms work and monetize.
Right.
Because I just don't think the money is there to take chances to begin with. So yeah, I really loved that letter.